Chicago's morning answer.
No, not you. Not you. Your organization's terrible.
On AM 560.
You are fake news.
The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. I did tweet out that ranking of Chicago highways. If you want to have a cathartic laugh, you want to read the descriptions
well, he was
that
spot on.
Barstool Carl offers at barstoolsports.com. Good stuff. This bad stuff, but good stuff. Michael Hodge. Remember that name, Michael Hodge? He was the Covington Catholic school kid who was initially identified as the kid who was standing nose to nose with Nathan Phillips at the Lincoln Memorial site. Misidentified. It wasn't him. He wasn't even on the trip. But it didn't stop him and his family from being doxxed. It didn't stop the Marxist mob from contacting Cincinnati State and trying to pressure them to withdraw or reject his application to the school's culinary arts program.
Okay.
It didn't stop them from going after his family's business, because that's what the Marxist mob does. And so this interesting story from the Cincinnati Enquirer, doxxed Covington Catholic senior helped raise $21,000 for nonprofit refuge. This is Michael Hodge telling the Cincinnati Enquirer, it was crazy to see all the people, be so quick to judge. He and his family members presented a check to Cindy Karras and the Mary Rose Mission this past Friday, despite the fact that hundreds of people sent hurtful things, threats to Hodge. Dozens more made harassing calls to his mother, and police officers had to escort Hodge to school for those first few days back after the incident at the Lincoln Memorial. Hodge's passion for culinary arts led him last summer to prepare and serve meals to, this is the way the press corps reports it, food insecure individuals at Mary Rose Mission. People that were hungry at the Mary Rose Mission, which is a Catholic nonprofit in Florence, Ohio. Food insecure. Goodness sakes. About 6 years earlier, Hodge's father, John Hodge, had offered engineering and architectural advice and a free inspection through his company, Century Construction.
That's nice.
To the Mary Rose Mission during the renovation of their 100-year-old structure. And this is, they targeted his father's construction company during the height of the mob action. With donations made by check through a GoFundMe page the family set up, they raised more than $20,000 for this mission. He said of the atmosphere at Covington Catholic, it's mostly returned to normal. This is Michael Hodge talking, this 18-year-old kid. I'm going to be optimistic. Just with anything, good can come out of it. So they misidentified him by name. They misidentified his character. And I'll look forward to the heartfelt apologies from all of those sentimental barbarians, Marxists, who attacked Hodge, his family, his family's livelihood, right? All of those internet heroes, those Twitter cowboys, the reckoning. For more on this topic, he wrote about it at the time. I thought a very good piece. Rusty Reno, he's the editor at First Things, firstthings.com, and he joins us now. Rusty, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you, folks in Chicagoland.
So you wrote a piece we talked about a little bit on the show during the furor after that incident at the Lincoln Memorial. And one of the things you said, sort of revisiting something you've written about before, which I've repurposed and pretended is my own. No, I'm just kidding. I give you credit. Is the bigot baiting. The bigot baiting, the solidarity and marginality, and you were essentially arguing that with this Covington Catholic incident, that it's time, really time, as if it weren't before, but now it's really time to stand up against the bigot baiting and go on offense.
Yeah, I mean, since when is it a presumption that a teenage boy from the Midwest wearing a MAGA hat is a racist? And this is, obviously a repurposing of the racist charge to serve naked partisan purposes. And it's only going to get worse, I'm afraid.
And so, what do you suggest? People in the Covington Catholic family position or others that witness this, what should they be doing? What should they be doing within the circles of influence in which they exist, what can the average Joe and Sally do out there?
Well, first thing is do no harm. Don't jump on the bandwagon. Wait. Get the facts, get the information. This rush to sort of join the lynching mob by the part of the bishop of Covington and the school administrators, that's really shameful to my mind.
Well, what could they've done
'Cause
differently?
we just got to prevent doing that. We just got to stop doing that.
Right. Well, if you're, where do you think the chaperones are to blame it all? I mean, they weren't around when this was going on, and if they were there, I think, and if adult was there, they would have stopped, I think, him from facing off with a Native American Indian.
No, I mean, I watched the whole 60-minute long tape that was filmed from the Black Israelite perspective, and it struck me I was heartened by it. We've got a kind of crazy quilt country, a lot of different people, some marginal people like the Black Israelite crowd is taunting the kids. They took it in good spirit. If I was sending my son to Washington, D.C. for the March for Life, part of what I want from Covington, Kentucky, let's get him a taste of the big wide world out there. And I thought the kids handled it very well. And I thought their chaperones, we don't want to protect our children from everything all the time, 24/7. It's really the leaders of our country who are absolutely hysterical, that are driving us into a ditch. It's not ordinary people, whether it's the grown-ups or the kids.
Speaking of the leaders of our country, and let's move to the other side of the ledger, conservatives. Your colleague at First Things, Daniel McCarthy, has an interesting piece in First Things about new conservative agenda in the Trump and frankly, post-Trump era he's really talking about. And he essentially picks up on some of the broad strokes Trump has painted and says, among other things, he talks about sort of the America First approach. He says, talks about conservatism that takes account of the different needs of different walks of life and regions of the country, serving the whole by serving its parts and drawing them together. In the past, the challenge was to harmonize farmers, urban capital, labor. The challenge now is to balance those groups with the post-industrial classes as well, and to strengthen the productive economy against the largely fictional economy of administrators and clerks. He essentially says we need to be more national in focus than economic in focus, and that's, I think, what he's describing in terms of stitching this tapestry together. Do you agree with that sort of agenda for a new conservative philosophy approach?
Yeah, I do. I think we need to, when it comes to these cultural issues like racism and so on, we need to think the best of our neighbors, not the worst. And then we also need an economy where a high school educated American can flourish. And we don't have that right now. I live in New York, and New York this place is has won big time in the global economy. That's great. That's good. But we need to make sure that the winnings are spread broadly throughout our society.
And so then the argument becomes, what's the method of distribution? Because of course, somebody hears that and they would say, well, that's exactly what Ocasio-Cortez and the Democrat socialists are saying.
Well, one of the most important parts of the tax bill was the elimination of the state and local tax deduction, or at least the dramatic reduction in places like New York. Now, I feel it. I'm going to be feeling it at tax time. But it's good policy because the places that are hurt the most are places that have done well in the global economy. And so now if you're thinking of opening a branch office of your bank or your insurance company or whatever, you might consider Chattanooga or Peoria or something like that as an alternative to New York or San Francisco. And that's what we need. We need to have businesses have incentives to expand all throughout the country, not just on the rich coasts.
Well, they shouldn't come to Illinois.
No, right. Illinois would
Illinois
be
is up there with
camp
New York
with California and New York. Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Yes.
You're preaching to the choir.
Indianapolis, then.
Yes, exactly. I want to go back to the bigot baiting and solidarity and marginality approach of the left that you've written eloquently about. What would you say the approach should be for conservatives in addressing like what's going on in Virginia with all of the upper echelon Democrats suffering either a race problem or a Me Too problem. Should we just watch and let the cultural Marxist left cannibalize itself, or is there something we can do to address intellectually, persuasively, the bigot baiting and the solidarity and marginality rap that they put out?
Yeah, I think the atmosphere of constant attack is very harmful to our country. And so while I find Northam odious for the sorts of things he said about abortion and infanticide, that to me is far, far more scandalous and far more relevant politically than what he did as a medical student 30 years ago. And so I think we should not be adding our voices here. In fact, instead, we should be urging our fellow citizens to adopt a more sensible and more forgiving approach to given human nature. Now, the sexual assault charges are different; they're more recent, and they may involve criminal acts, and obviously our elected officials should be held accountable for that.
He is Rusty Reno. He's the editor at First Things, firstthings.com, one of those outlets you should read regularly. Rusty Reno, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
A pleasure. Have a good day.
You too. Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of